Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to talk about something that has been asked in my inbox time and time again, and I totally understand why, because when I was in the position of trying for a baby and really struggling, I wanted as much information as I could possibly get, and the internet is a brilliant place, but there's sometimes so much information you don't know where to go, and personal stories are quite helpful to read, even if it's to give you that little bit of hope when you may be needing it. So I hope it's helpful, but I wanted to share how I managed to have my two beautiful boys. So I will take you right back. Myself and my now husband George got married, and we thought after we get married, you know, we'll have a couple of months, we'll go on our honeymoon, and then we will try for a baby. And I knew that it can take a long time and so many things can happen because of the job I'm in, and I speak to women all day who have sadly had hard experiences and tough times, but you just never think it's going to happen to you. It got to Christmas and we were like, okay, new year, like let's try for a baby, it's going to be so exciting. In the February, George had gone on a work trip and I was about to go for an MRI scan on my back because I had some back pain and an ongoing issue. And on the form it said, are you pregnant? So I thought, oh, I'll just do a pregnancy test so that I can write no. And I did it, I put it on the side, I was brushing my teeth and I sort of forgot about it, glanced over, saw the two lines, and I honestly had to look at it for ages to be like, oh my God, look at the packet, yeah, 2 lines, is pregnant, oh my God. So it was 24 hours before George was going to come home, so I just sort of like sat on it by myself, and I was like, well, that was easy, 1 month, amazing. He got home from his work trip late in the evening, and I was sat up waiting for him. He was like, hello, what are you doing still awake? And I was like, look, showed him the test. We were all really excited, amazing. And actually I was going on a trip the very next day, so we were like ships in the night at this stage, and I could not think of anything else. I was beyond excited. I was downloading all the apps. I was, you know, going ahead in time being like, oh my God, so I'll be due then. By Christmas we'll have have a baby, and it will look like this and this and this. And within minutes of finding out this test was positive, I was like planning the next 9 months. Anyway, went on this trip, it was 5 days or something, came back, and 2 days later, I think, so it would have been like a week since I found out, or 8 days, I started bleeding a bit. And I know that it's very common, you can bleed in the first trimester, but I was having these cramps and I was like, something's not right here. So called my GP. So I hadn't even like been to the doctor or spoken to a midwife at this point. Called the GP and they were like, it does sound like you're miscarrying. See how you get on at home. If you can manage it at home, all fine. If it's getting really painful or you're having big blood clots, like come in and see us, whatever. So overnight it was really painful and actually just really sad. And within 24 hours, everything had calmed down, you know, it had passed, it had happened. It really, for us, showed us that it's what we wanted, because we were really sad about it, and it was like, oh, okay, we actually really do want a baby right now. So we were like, let's just go again, we'll try again. And to our surprise, the very next cycle, when I was waiting for my period to come, it didn't come. And I was hesitant to do a test because I thought, surely not. And it was. We were pregnant again, and I thought, oh my God, I can't believe it. This is amazing. Kept a little bit more calm about this one. Didn't get so excited. Just thought, let's get to the midwife appointment. Like, let's just get from one phase to the next phase and just stay a bit cool, calm and collected on this one. But things were going well. I was a bridesmaid for my best friend, and I didn't tell anyone. I was like trying to drink a bit of champagne, pour a bit down the sink, pass it to George. It was like really exciting to keep this little secret between us, and I was so excited to tell everybody. Eventually, we actually went on a trip to New York, and in New York I felt really nauseous, and I was actually thrilled about it. things were feeling good. The symptoms were all there, and I was like, okay, great. And in New York, we bought these tiny little baby grows, because as we got back, we went via each of our parents' houses and siblings and things, and gave them like some gifts from New York, and it was a baby grow, and we sort of told them all that way, and we filmed their reaction, and it was like a whole thing. Really excited. Went for an early scan at 10 weeks. Went for the scan, and the baby came up on the screen. It was an internal scan. The baby came up on the screen, but you could see the sonographer was like, doing all these measurements, and I was like, what is going on? She said, okay, there is a baby, but it's measuring a little bit earlier than you said. And I was thinking, well, that literally can't be, because I was pregnant that time before. So like there wasn't much room for error here, but she said, it looks all good though, but it just looks like 2 weeks before you say. So we can't really see, oh no, it was even like 3 weeks. We can't really see a heartbeat, but it's like, it's there and everything. So come back in 2 weeks. And I was really like, I'm not sure about this. I don't feel that positive about it. But we went away, and it was the longest 2 weeks ever. And all I was doing all day, every day and night was adding up the days, Googling stories of like this exact scenario, and thinking, well, she could be right. This could have happened, that could have happened. And I'm quite a positive person, and I did my whole positive thing. And I was like, well, it's still in there. I'm not bleeding. It could be all great. And by the 2 weeks, I'd sort of talked myself round, and I was like, okay, let's go and see this baby. And went into this scanning room. The sonographer started the scan, and then she just went, I'm really sorry. And I felt this like physical pain. It felt like something landed on me, and I instantly felt sorry for her. It was a very British thing of like, oh my God, don't worry, I know what you're gonna say. What a horrible part of your job, which is not what I should have been thinking about, but I was. So I was like, oh, don't worry, I understand. She was like, there's been no growth, and we still can't see a heartbeat. And so she explained that it was something called a miscarriage, which I hadn't really heard of before, where, you know, the pregnancy has passed, but the body hasn't sort of realised and hasn't passed the fetus or the baby. So she said, well, we've got a GP here who can refer you onto, you know, because this was a private scanning place, refer you onto the hospital, and they can sort of help you from here. So I had to go and sit back in the waiting room with all these other couples who were like excitedly waiting to go in for their scan, and I found it so hard. And I remember just looking up or out of the window, and I was blinking, trying not to let the tears come, because I knew once those tears would come, they wouldn't stop. The floodgates would be open, and that was it. And so we were just sort of holding each other's hand really tight, but not talking. This GP came in, and she was lovely. Oh my God, she sort of held my hand. We went into her room, and I just burst into tears, and I couldn't control it. And I was just saying, like, why? This is so unfair. Like, everything was going really well. I don't understand. She was great. She explained everything, and she said, look, I'll pass you on to the hospital, and they will call. This was a Friday, so they were like, we'll call you on Monday. Again, a really long and really sad weekend. I just didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to speak to anyone. I was just crying all the time. I felt so sad. And very weird that this baby was still in there and not alive, and it was awful. So Monday comes around, I get a call from the hospital, and the lady on the phone was taking all my information, and I know she had to ask the question, but it just was a really horrible question to be asked, where she said, how many pregnancies have you had? I said 2. She said, and how many alive children do you have? Oh. And I was like, 0. So anyway, she said, come in tomorrow. And so I went in the next day, and they did another scan to confirm, which was very sad again. But at this point, I sort of had my like brave face on, and I was like, right, we need to sort it out. What are we going to do? And my mum was with me, because George had to go on a work trip, which he was so gutted about. I felt awful, and I was like, do you know what? You know, it's fine. it's fine, go on the work trip. He really couldn't get out of it. And so my mum came with me, and they said, we can either wait for the body to pass it naturally, but it has been in there for quite a few weeks. I don't know how long it would be. Or we could do a D&C, which I don't actually know what that stands for. Like a surgical procedure to remove it. But there's a 10-day wait for that. And I was like, I just cannot have it inside me any longer. I need it out sooner. So they said, well, we could do a medically induced miscarriage. I don't know, they could medically do it. I can't remember what it was called. Those appointments are like a blur. My advice, if anyone's going through this right now, which I'm guessing lots of you are, if you're watching this, take someone with you to those appointments, because your head is like all over the shop, and at the time you think you can remember everything they're saying, but when you get out you're like, oh my god, what even happened? So I opted for that one, and they said, take these pessaries home, insert them, and within 4 hours things will start to happen and it will pass naturally. And she said it'll be like a very heavy period. So we went home. She was totally right about the 4 hours. It was literally on the dot 4 hours. I started getting these horrible cramps. My God, horrible. And then things started happening. Every time I went to the bathroom, lots of tissue was being passed. It was quite clear what was happening, but it was not like a period. So I'm telling you this because I've told lots of people since who are going to have this happen, and they're like, thank you for warning me. It was very heavy, like a lot of blood and a lot of clots. It felt quite traumatic because I was expecting it to be like a heavy period, and it wasn't, absolutely wasn't. So that was happening for hours and hours. And then when it felt like everything had sort of passed, I thought, okay, fine. And it was a couple of hours. And then George came back from his trip. So I was at my mum's for all of this. I went home. I was lying on the sofa, still getting these cramps, but less stuff was passing. And then as we were getting ready to go to bed, so that, like, I'd started all this at midday, and this was like 10 p.m. I stood up to go and brush my teeth. And as I stood up, gravity must have taken hold, and I felt something come out. So I ran to the toilet, and as I pulled my leggings down, or my pajama bottoms, whatever I was wearing, there was this giant clot that came out where it was quite clear that was the fetus coming out. And it was like a, it took my breath away moment, and I shouted to George, do you want to see it? Oh my God, it was just the most weird experience where I was like, what do I do? What do I do? George said he didn't want to see it. So I flushed it down the toilet, and it was like, oh my God, I just flushed it down the toilet. I was like, who prepares you for these experiences? It was just the most bizarre thing. Horrible. Anyway, we hugged it out, we cried. I feel like crying now. It was just awful. And all night I couldn't sleep. I was having these hot sweats. I was just remembering seeing it, and it was just, yeah. Oh my God, it was horrible. And a bit shaky talking about it. God, and it was quite a long time ago now. So I just want people who are going to go through that to just be prepared. Get support around you. Don't be on your own. You'll be fine. You will be fine. But it's just a thing. It really is a thing. So the cramps sort of stopped overnight. Everything was done and dusted. And they said, please keep doing pregnancy tests to make sure that the tests come back negative, so we know that everything has passed. And for the next couple of days, they kept coming back a strong positive, like really strong positive. And that was very hard to see, because obviously that's what you want to see, but I didn't want to see it. You know, it was a real mind game. And so eventually, after like 5 days, I think, the test came back negative, and it was a relief. It was sort of like, right, we can move on now. It took me a long time to recover from that mentally. It took me a long time to recover from it for a few things. First of all, I was really cross at my body. I was really angry that it wasn't doing what it was supposed to be doing. Why could everybody else get pregnant, hold on to their pregnancies, and suddenly, like, my body couldn't do that? I just didn't understand. For someone who was really in tune with their body for their whole life, you know, my job is to know what the female body is doing and all these kind of things. Suddenly I felt very detached from it. I felt very removed from my body. I felt like we weren't working together anymore, and I was angry at it. I started going back to the gym and I felt like I was punishing my body. Like, how dare you do this to me? And it was really unhealthy, like a really, really unhealthy time for my mind. And I had to work a lot on it. I had a wonderful acupuncturist who was helping me for the fertility stuff, but also I was talking to her a lot about how I was feeling, and she was great. And through that whole process, it sort of helped me to befriend my body again. It sounds really strange, but I think if you're going through the situation too, you'll be nodding along, because it sounds like it's pretty common from what I hear, that you have to learn to trust your body again. So after that pregnancy and that miscarriage, we took some time. George and I decided, and initially I was like, we've got to try again immediately. We need to get pregnant again. And I realise now I was trying to put a band-aid over that pain by just going forward, and it was not the right thing. I was like crying, being like, come on, let's try again. And George was quite rightly saying, I don't think this is a good idea. I don't think you're ready. Like, there's no harm in waiting. And I think when you're trying for a baby, any day, month, whatever that passes, you feel like you're losing the race against absolutely nobody. But you feel like, I don't know, personally, I felt like I was seeing pregnant women everywhere. I felt like I was just watching everyone else become pregnant and announce pregnancies on Instagram and, you know, wearing their baby on board badges. And I was just, life was passing me by. That's what it felt like. But we decided to take the summer. So this happened in May. We decided to take the summer. We went on a holiday with our friends. We did a few little UK trips. We just like got back to ourselves again, and it was really good for us. Everybody is different, but for us that was really necessary. We sort of parked the idea, even though you never really stop thinking about like, oh, when are we going to try again? Da, da, da. I made sure my periods came back, that they were regular again, like my body felt like it was good. I regained that trust with my body. I started training again. I started feeling good. Things were going in the right direction. Anyway, we started to try again in like September, and the first month went by and we didn't get pregnant. And because the last 2 times we tried, we got pregnant immediately, I was like, oh my God, I'm infertile now, great. You know, like I just thought, I was in that mindset of like, maybe it won't work for us. And so I was starting to get negative again. And then the next month we did get pregnant. And, you know, I hope that this is not triggering for people who are struggling to conceive, because that was not our issue. The struggling to conceive was not where we had problems. Our problems came with the next step of holding on to the pregnancy. So we got pregnant again in October. And my God, I was nervous. I basically, even though I knew that exercise does not cause miscarriages, it's like my job to know these kind of things, I know the science, I was terrified. I basically wanted to just sit still. I didn't want to do anything. I was petrified of even walking fast. It was crazy. But I got the double lines. I did like 4 tests, all fine. I think I was doing tests every day. It's expensive, but for my peace of mind, I need to do tests every day. And very sadly, I could see these lines starting to get lighter and lighter. And I was like comparing them up against the light. It was such an unhealthy time. It was awful. And I was Googling everything. And within a week, that pregnancy ended and I did a test and it was totally negative. And that bit probably was the saddest part of all. Because I thought after we'd had that traumatic miscarriage, the missed miscarriage, and we'd had this time off, it was like, we've had our hardship, that was our struggle, now we're going to be fine. And having it happen a 3rd time, I just was like, what the hell, this is awful. So I spoke to my GP and they said, look, you've had 3 miscarriages in a row, you now qualify in the NHS for, tests. I don't know what they were called, like infertility tests or fertility tests. So registered for all of that, got the appointment through, and we got pregnant again the very next month, which was obviously great. But the same thing happened, the exact same thing happened. And after 2 weeks actually this time, which was torturous because it was like, oh, looking good this time, the line started to get lighter, and lo and behold, it didn't stick. in the middle of all that, we had all these tests done and they came back completely fine. The doctors were like, everything's fine. I think it's just bad luck. Keep trying, keep trying. And I was like, I don't know. I don't feel like it's bad luck. Like for somebody who keeps getting pregnant, I keeps losing it. Like, seems like something's happening. And my acupuncturist agreed with me. She was like, it keeps ending at the same time. Even the miscarriage, yes, it stayed in there, but it ended at the same time. Something seems to be blocking it from progressing. So I Googled, as you do, found this private clinic, which I will link in the description. I used to not like saying where I went because obviously that's what was right for us. It's not right for everybody, but I know you'll ask, so I'm going to put it in the description. It's not a recommendation. It's not, I'm not being paid. It's not anything other than me telling you my experience. And obviously, so many of you won't be based in the UK and all of these kind of things. But we went to this private clinic, or I called them up and I was like, this is so expensive. And I was crying on the phone being like, I just don't know what to do. We don't have loads of money to be spending on IVF. I thought that's the way we were going to have to go. I was so at a loss. Anyway, the receptionist was the kindest woman, kindest woman. So my advice is, if you are feeling like I felt and you're completely unsure of where to go and whether this place will be right for you or whichever place you are looking at, call them up, ask the questions. Don't pay for the appointment and ask the questions in the appointment. Ring them up and ask them, email them and ask them, because usually they're really happy to talk it through. And this lady was, I think she spoke to me for like 45 minutes on the phone. I was so grateful for her. Anyway, I booked the appointment, the initial consultation, which was to talk to the doctor and do lots of tests in that appointment, and they could explain what was going to go on the way. Anyway, I think you know where the story's going to go. By the time the appointment had come round, which was 6 weeks after that, we had got pregnant again. So we went into the clinic and the doctor was quite cross with us. He was like, the whole idea is that you're not pregnant before you come here, because we need to prepare your body for pregnancy. You know, we need to do the test, we need to figure out what's going wrong. So we felt like naughty school children. I was like, I'm so sorry. And he said, quite frankly, which was hard to hear, but he was being honest, this pregnancy is probably not going to last, so we just have to wait for it to miscarry. And I was like, okay. So he chatted us through everything and said, it sounds like an autoimmune thing where my body is not liking being pregnant, and it's like fighting against it because it doesn't think it's a good thing. It thinks it needs to get rid of it because it's a disease or something of that sort. And it made sense with what he was saying. We were ticking all those boxes. So he was like, look, we'll do all the testing and then let's just see what happens to this pregnancy, come back, and when it's miscarried, which was really hard to hear, when it's miscarried, then we can start the process of preparing your body for pregnancy so it's much more likely to not fight it off. So we went away. I really tried to detach myself from this pregnancy because, as he said, it wasn't going to last. I didn't want to get myself upset again, so I thought I'm just going to not think about it so that I don't get upset. It's more of a thing that has to happen, a process. Anyway, we went back the next week after all the tests were done to go and get the results. I said to him, I haven't been bleeding, but you know, who knows? And he did an internal examination and he was like, oh my goodness, the pregnancy's still there and there's a heartbeat. It's the first time we'd heard a heartbeat. So I was like, oh my God. And he said, let me tell you your results. So he said in the results that yes, because he'd been able to test me whilst I was pregnant, he actually got more information than he was initially looking for. So he could see that as soon as I became pregnant, my natural killer cells shot right up. So my body was clearly going, something's happening here, not really sure we like it, let's start attacking it. So he said, we can see what's happening. We can see why your body keeps losing the pregnancies. So he came up with a concoction of a treatment plan that would work for me specifically. Now, I cannot remember exactly the name of all of the drugs. And even if I did, I don't really want to say, because I know that I would have been literally writing it down, being like, I'm going to find these drugs, and they're not right for everybody. Everybody's so different. So don't be annoyed at me, but I'm not going to tell you exactly what the drugs I was on, because it's not helpful to everybody. But he was like, let's start right now and see if we can save this pregnancy. He's not going to promise anything. And I was like, oh my God, I understand, but I'm really excited. I was like squeezing George's hand. We started taking all the drugs and going in for drips of various things. But every week we went back, the scans were good. The baby was growing. And I was in the frame of mind where I was like waiting for something to go wrong. Because I was so used to nothing going right. And it was like, will this be the appointment where it goes wrong? Will it happen now? Will it happen now? And things were going right. And he was like, I'm very happy with how things are going. And at 20 weeks, he signed me off and sent me back to the NHS. I was having NHS appointments alongside this. And he was like, you're all good. And from then on, the pregnancy was very smooth sailing. It's very safe to say I didn't breathe out fully, I don't think, until the moment that Alfie was in my arms. It was a whole journey getting there, and my God, it broke me down time and time again, and it was so stressful. But having him in my arms, I was just so grateful, so proud of my body, and I just couldn't believe it. I've been rabbiting on for a long time, and I know that you want to know about my second pregnancy. So I will quickly tell you that I was worried that my body would do the same thing again. But I'd read in my hours and hours of Googling stuff that sometimes when your body has had a full pregnancy, your body can remember what it feels like. So the natural killer cells don't always come back again and knock it down. So I didn't want to leave it too long. So at around 10 months post Alfie, we decided to try again and just see. And we were very lucky and fell pregnant again the second cycle, I think. So on Alfie's first birthday, I found out I was pregnant. And I thought, let's try it without the drugs, because obviously, you know, we don't have loads of money to be paying for all of this. We'd saved up just in case, but I was like, we might as well try. So I'd sort of got myself ready to be strong and brave in case it didn't work out. But little Barney hung on in there, and at every scan things were going smoothly, and we didn't need all those drugs. I just couldn't believe that my body was doing it. The whole pregnancy went through very, very smoothly, no issues cropped up, and he was born a very healthy baby without any of the medication needed in the first pregnancy. So very different stories. My anxiety was sky high for both pregnancies, but we got there in the end. Who knows what will happen? We want to have a much bigger gap now, because 2 kids that close together is a lot of work. It's lovely and wonderful, and I'm grateful every day for them, but it's hard work. So I want to have a much bigger gap before we try for a third baby. And, you know, I can't lie and say there isn't that worry in the back of my mind that my body has forgotten how to do it and we'd have to go through this whole thing again. But you just don't know until you get there. So I know this is a long video, but I really hope that it's helpful for anybody who's in this position and going through this horrible, horrible journey. I really hope that you found a little bit of hope in my story and found things useful. I'm giving you the biggest hug in the world if you are in this horrible roller coaster of emotions right now. I really hope you're okay. Ask the questions, get the support that you need, and I'm sending you all the love in the world. Thank you for watching. Please send this video to anybody you think that might find it useful. The more we can get the word out there, the better, because I know that natural killer cells are something that loads of people don't know about. I didn't know about it, and so if I hadn't have found out, maybe I wouldn't have my 2 boys now, and I just can't even imagine that. So share it widely, let me know if you found it useful, and I will see you in the next video.